Good morning. It's time for another episode of Beyond Limits, where spirit meets science. I'm Dr. Bill, and happy Sunday. So I hope you had a wonderful week and a good weekend. Today we're going to talk about, just give you an overview of today's episode, is kind of bridging Eastern wisdom with scientific truth and exploring the Taoist principle of effortless flow. Through a lens of thermodynamics. So I'm going to talk a little science and spirit here, which is what this podcast is about, Beyond Limits, where spirit meets science. And we'll kind of unpack that in terms of the universal laws of energy and entropy and how they mirror the spiritual laws of manifestation, surrender, and divine ordering. And I think it's important to call out that, and so that's why we call this the thermodynamics of the Tao. But I have a question for you. What if manifestation wasn't about forcing outcomes, but about understanding the natural order of energy? Let's think about that for a minute. I think most people approach either the science or the spiritual side of this, but maybe don't necessarily see the connection of how they come together. And that's what I'm going to try and do with all of you today. Now, science as a sacred principle, I mean, I'm wearing my science t-shirt today, has a lot to do with this. I remember about, 10, 11 years ago or so, I was teaching chemistry at universities and so on around Clearwater, St. Pete, and Tampa. And I was giving a lecture on thermodynamics. And at the same time, in parallel, I was reading the Tao Te Ching for, maybe the third or fourth time. I've read it several times. Every time I read it, I gain more insights from that. But I found this connection between the two as I was exploring, preparing my lecture for thermodynamics. So you're going to get a little bit of a science lesson today, but I'm going to try and kind of bridge that connection, as I said, with spiritual principles and of manifestation and divine ordering, entropic ordering or whatever. And I think it's just fascinating to think about. Let's start with the first law of thermodynamics. Now, many of you maybe have not, I'm a PhD chemist, so I've learned and studied not only thermodynamics, but also quantum mechanics as well when I was at university. And so these principles, and I've taught both. But again, thermodynamics is kind of like the first physics or whatever of study. People call it Newtonian physics. Okay, so it has to do with Isaac Newton and observing what happened around us. Gravity, Fermi action. There's an opposite and equal reaction, that sort of thing. These sorts of types of physics. Now, quantum mechanics talks about it at the quantum level, which is an unseen level where we can't see it. Down at the molecular level and below. But the first law of thermodynamics states that energy is neither created nor destroyed. Okay? So it simply just takes on a new form. So there's not any kind of there's a balance to the universe in terms of universal law. So I should say that the universal laws that govern how nature works, our universe, all of that is operating, has been since the beginning of the time. And to our understanding of science today, we have a certain understanding of that. Some of it is still theory, but it's been observed and reproduced so many times that it becomes a law. So thermodynamics, or the first law of thermodynamics, became a law because it is no longer a theory anymore. It's been proven over again. But those principles are operating in the universe and in your life, whether you are participating in them or not. So wouldn't it be better that we actually understood some of these principles and apply them to our lives in terms of how we approach moving down our spiritual path and so on? So again, the first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and that the energy of the universe is constant. So it's the same amount of energy since the beginning of time from the universe. It just simply takes a different form as it goes through a process of from free energy to entropy and all this kind of stuff. So, and there's another important concept here related to this, and that is spontaneous processes. Okay, and again, speaking of energy again, there's like it's constant. There's an eternal nature to that. So it's almost like it's a divine essence in a sense. So if we think about the mystery of manifestation itself, let's correlate that to spontaneous process. Now, when you hear the word spontaneous, you think something happens immediately. But in the description of the laws of thermodynamics, that's not really the case. In science, what that means is that it doesn't translate to fast. In fact, it could be fast or it could be slow. And it's a spontaneous process. And it only talks about what happens in the beginning and the end result. You don't know the path or the how of how it got from one end to the other, the way energy moved around. In fact, it's not possible to measure that. But by observations of many experiments over the years and centuries and so on, people have determined that the spontaneous process is about energy moving from one form to the other, and that there's a beginning and there's an end result. We can see that. So how does that correlate to us? Well, that's about letting go of control in a timeline as well, right? It's really surrendering to this divine timing. And the universe doesn't need our micromanagement. It just needs our clarity and belief, right? And I think the best way to think about this is that, entropy and this concept of entropy is the driving force for spontaneous process. So entropy is kind of describes the randomness of energy in the universe, right? And that leads us into describing the natural order of things. And that's what entropy is described as, a natural progression from order to disorder in the universe, right? So this is what the second law of thermodynamics talks about. It talks about entropy, a randomness, always increases. And life's natural movements that we see around us in nature and all that is constantly moving from a place of order to disorder. And if you think about in the Taoist alignment of this, or these principles, and what Lao Tzu talked about in the Tao Te Ching is there's a lot of reference to the flow of water. And let me give you another metaphor. So if you think about, you pick up a deck of cards, they're in a certain order in your hand, and then you play 52 card pickup with somebody. We used to do that as kids, right? Throw the cards up in the air and they scatter all over the floor. What are the odds that you could actually put them back in order, the exact same order they were before you threw them out? So that's what this second law of thermodynamics talks about. It talks about entropy as this randomness of this energy is always increasing. It's a positive movement. So it goes from order to disorder. I mean, does your house stay clean when you clean it? No. It gets dirty again. Things get moved around. It gets disordered. Because that is the natural order of the universe. And nature in itself spontaneously proceeds to states that have the highest probability of existing. So think about that for a minute. Nature spontaneously proceeds to the states that have the highest probability of existing. So if you think about your own personal life and your some own examples in your life, what is it costing you energetically to keep things in order versus when you just let go? It takes a lot of energy. In fact, it's actually a waste of time to do that, to spend all of our energy trying to do that, rather than just letting things flow in natural order, in this natural, spontaneous process. Okay? what's interesting about these concepts is that there's so many parallels now. Just like we can't measure experimentally some of these things in thermodynamics, we can't do that in manifestation either. Doesn't mean that it isn't true. I mean, that this is a theory. I mean, let's think about it for a minute, because again, it's a process we see. We're manifesting something that happens in our life. We have a vision over what that is, which, remember, everything is energy. So we're creating that in some way because we've created an image for that, and we hold fast to that. We don't know how. Remember, you don't know. You can know the beginning, you know the end. And we're moving to a place of where that manifests in our life. And we see the end result of that. But we don't think about the process of what the beginning was and how it got there. So, like I said, these universal laws are operating in your life, whether you're participating in them or not. Well, maybe you want to be more conscious to participate in that. And instead of trying to order things in a certain way to make certain outcomes, which takes a tremendous amount of energy, it's better to visualize where we want to go, that end result, and then let that energy process take place that will manifest that in our lives. And again, there's no time frame for that, right? It's spontaneous doesn't mean it's immediately. It could happen. It could happen overnight, or it could take a week. Maybe it takes a year. Some things, if I look back at my life, some things I thought were going to happen sooner didn't until later. You know, everything happens in its divine right order. Okay, again, nature itself, again, which I love this, spontaneously proceeds to the states that have the highest probability of existing. That's beautiful. And if you think about a concept we call entropic ordering, that's a scientific way to say manifestation, okay? Entropic ordering is as spiritual manifestation. So energy flows towards free energy states. We're always transmuting energy. We can't measure it. Like I said, we can't measure this. However, we see the end result all the time. So even though we can't measure it in thermodynamics, as I said, we can't do that in our life. In fact, we see it almost as a miracle sometimes. We go, wow, how did that happen? Well, you created that in some way, either subconsciously or consciously. So here's an interesting concept. Free energy is abundant in the universe. Okay, there's tons of that. And we can use that to manifest our desires. So it's inversely related to entropy, right, in that ordering. And if we think about entropic ordering for a moment, the fact that we exist ourselves, which is an entropic ordering, I mean ordering of taking free energy and creating the essence of who we are, that takes a lot of energy. And it's inversely related to what the natural order of things are in the universe. So when we die, again, our bodies will decompose, the energy will go back into the universe, will become free energy again. But isn't that kind of beautiful how that manifests the essence of who we are? Think about that for a minute. Philosophically, just kind of go down that rabbit hole and think about, why are you here in the first place? What does it all mean? Why is this ordering happen to bring you together energetically to exist in this time, in this place, right now? So that's incredible, the creation. And so part of this has to do with nature spontaneously creates or moves to this higher ordering of things. And I love that. Now, if you think about continuing on with entropic ordering for a moment, so visualization is a form of energy concentration. Our thoughts equal energy, which equal a creative force. So you yourself are a divine alchemist working with the universal raw material of all this free energy that exists. You have an unlimited amount of free energy. Remember, energy has been the same amount of energy in the universe. It's been constant since the beginning of time. and it moves back and forth into different forms and back to release back to free energy. It all is just energy at the end of the day. The fact that we even have a consciousness or a thought, or we think of that, or the existence of a spirit or soul or whatever, is all an energetic construct. And again, can we actually measure this? You have somebody, I'm a scientist, right? So this is why, I've been the scientist on the spiritual path for many, many years, and I just make observations of the world around me and how things get created and don't get created. And some things will go to entropy completely, change your life, because if there's any constant in the universe, things change. Well, that's related to this because everything's moving to disorder, to chaos, so to speak. And we waste a tremendous amount of energy ourselves, like I said, trying to keep it in a certain order, rather than creating and visualizing where it is we want to go energetically, and that creative force that we're putting into our thoughts for that, and then following, again, you don't know, the beginning, know the end result. I know what I want in the beginning, and then when I get there, I see the end result. It happens. But how I got there, I don't have to know that. The permutations of the way things happen or unfold in our lives, there's so many variables, and we don't have the intellectual capacity to even understand all those permutations, and we don't have to. We only need to know the beginning and the end, and just to enjoy the journey as we're going through this. And it's way more fun to do it that way than it is to fight to keep things the way they're supposed to be, or whatever way you think they're supposed to be, when the reality is you're just limiting the greater manifestation of your own life, of where you're supposed to be, or where you want to be, or what's driving you to be in that place as well. So again, it's up to you. It's a choice and how you do that. Now let's talk about the spiritual technology of surrender, okay? We talk about entropic forces, right? Where we're reorganizing free energy into some form. Love is the highest entropic force that exists. That is a powerful energy. And visualizing outcomes from this place of feeling, not wishing, oh, I wish I had this, I wish I had that. No, don't wish. That's like begging or pleading. You have the power to create that yourself. Visualize what it is you want in your life. And then from that, those outcomes will come. It's not just to visualize it or write it down or see it or whatever, but it's also feeling it, right? I'll share the story from my daughter. I don't think she'll mind doing this, but when she was, she's young, pretty a cool example of manifestation. But she wrote down on a piece of paper everything she wanted in a man for a relationship to be in her life. And she put it under a pillow and slept on that. This is when she was still in high school. And sure enough, she did meet that guy. They ended up getting married. Now they had one kid and their second kid on the way, my second grandchild. And she still is in that place because I've seen her post or talk about this or whatever. But this is what she wanted to manifest in her life, and this is what she created. She didn't know how that was going to happen or how she was going to meet this person or anything like that. It just happened. So you can do the same thing. We're working in this metaphysical dimension of where time doesn't exist. There is no real time in a linear construct that we think of, okay? It doesn't really exist. So think about what you want to do in terms of creating and manifesting your life. And then think about these universal laws as they exist. Now, I want to close with some kind of takeaways that you can take into your life and do that. So the first is remember or understand that energy can either be created or destroyed, and that manifestation is about manipulating energy from one form to another. So you're taking it from free energy into some form that you're visualizing that you want to manifest. And then recognize that spontaneous processes are not necessarily fast. And then let go of trying to control this timeline, because it really isn't important. Okay? You have this sense of energy or panic, that's your ego talking to you, thinking that, oh no, I got to do it by this date or whatever. No, you limit yourself by trying to do that. So remember that you can do that. You have to do that. Next thing is to tap into this abundant free energy. It's available in the earth. Remember, it's abundant, and this is where we move it from entropic ordering or manifestation into our life. It's available to us. We just need to visualize the desired outcome, and it's already achieved because we feel it, because then it's already happened. And then finally, you want to surrender to this process of manifestation in the universe, God, Spirit, or whatever you want to label it, and allow nature to unfold spontaneously. And let that happen in your life. So here's your call to action this week. What will you be surrendering this week? Think about that. Ask yourself the question, what will you surrender this week? And the second thing is, what are you over-ordering instead of flowing? In other words, what is it that you are expending a tremendous amount of energy on trying to keep things in a certain order? Take a step back and you'll know what it is, because I'm sure you're doing it. We all do it. We've all done it. Of what it is that you're trying to control. And move into this state of flowing. Remember, you just know the beginning, you feel it, and you know where it is in the end. And then you take the inspired action that happens. Sometimes it happens without you doing anything. It just comes into your realm. If I think about what I'm doing with NutriSelect now and raising capital for our pre-seed round, all the investors that have come in to my sphere and my universe came to me. I didn't find them. None of them. I didn't go actually find, this person did this and then I'm going to go get the funding from there. No, because that would be me trying to order it in a certain way. No, I simply just felt the passion of what it is that I'm creating, and I already see the vision of what's going to manifest and how it's going to transform, how consumers buy supplements, going to transform a whole industry. I already see all this. I am the only one that sees it. It's hard for me to describe to people what I actually see. I wish I could play out the movie in my head of what this visual is, and not only seeing it, but feeling it, and how powerful it is, and how it's going to transform and change so many things. And so just that energy of that beginning and end creation process that I'm in, those things that enable that to manifest are coming into my life. It's really that simple. And so we get sidetracked sometimes thinking, okay, we need to do things a certain way or whatever. Well, not necessarily true. If I told you that all I did was put it out and followed every path or whatever, I'm just creating more energy. Even if it's a path that doesn't actually come to fruition or something, the energy of that process is adding to this overall manifestation of this vision of where I want to go. It's all connected. And it's the same thing for you in your life. So think about these things this week when you're going over it. Visualize your one desire. This is your practice. Visualize one desire. Feel it. Let go of it and smile. Okay? Be like water. And again, manifestation is about transmuting energy. It's not forcing outcomes. Your thoughts shape entropy. Love is the most powerful ordering force, and time is irrelevant in divine flow. Presence is everything. That means being present in the moment. You're in that now. Don't sit in how or try to figure out where you want to go. That'll take care of itself. You have the vision, you feel it, feel that in the present moment, because then this is where we get this idea that time is irrelevant. If you think about it, it doesn't really figure into this construct of thinking, because there is no time frame there. It's just you feel it already as the present moment, and then when that moment actually manifests in your life, yeah, there was a certain time frame you can measure after the fact, but the reality is in that moment when you're creating that, there is no time. I know it's going to fry your noodle a little bit, but think about that for a little bit. So there's your takeaways. That's your homework for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me in social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. And you can follow there. The best way is to go to the website at www.drbillclark.life. And you'll find connections to everything through my social media, all the ventures that I'm doing, and other things that's going on in my realm. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you again next Sunday for another episode of Beyond Limits, where spirit meets science. With love and gratitude, I'm Dr. Bill.